Hello, my name is Emily Harman. I'm the director of the Department of Navy's Office of Small Business Programs, and we're here to do an industry live talk on Facebook Live. Okay, great. So we were just making sure that we are live, so we're live. Office of Small Business Programs. Okay, so I'm here with Mae Mathieu, who is the Deputy for Small Business Programs at Marine Corps Base Quantico for the Regional Contracting Office. And Marine Office comes under the United States Marine Corps' Installations and Logistics Command. And at that command, there is a Small Business Associate Director, Mr. Stan Days. So you work for your commanding officer, but you also work as a team, Stan's kind of like a team lead for you, leading the Marine Corps Installations and Logistics Command and how they do small business.
Correct, right? And mentoring kind of role.
Mentoring kind of role, okay. Can you tell me a little bit about the role that you play as Deputy for Small Business Programs at Marine Corps Base Quantico?
Certainly. As the Deputy for Small Business Programs, I support the Regional Contracting Office, which our job is to support the installation.
Okay.
And so we procure installation type services. And we buy specifically for the installation commander, for like water treatment for the installation. We also support the Commandant of the Marine Corps and his band. And
how do you support the band?
We procure their uniforms.
Okay.
And their medals. They're pretty sharp.
Well, I just saw them at a parade, at the Silent Drill Parade on 8th and I a few Fridays ago, and they were awesome. Yeah. They look great. The uniforms look sharp.
And we buy their instruments.
Okay.
And for the record, about 70% of the instruments come from small businesses.
Awesome.
They are made specifically for that individual artist.
Wow.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
We also support the Combat Development Command, and they have a contract for JCID's Program Support Services.
What's JCID's?
It's the Joint Capabilities Interactive Directorate.
Okay.
And it's a process and a program. Some people want to call it administrative support service, but it is unique to that program and process, and you have to know how to get the documentation through it.
Okay.
We also support the Marine Corps University and the Warfighting Lab and the Training and Education Command and the Intelligence Agency. Of course, we buy lots of cybersecurity in support of them and the software that they need to execute those type actions on behalf of the Marine Corps.
Okay.
And I am one person, and so I support the entire contracting office and work with them to help them find small businesses that can perform those type services for those activities.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, today our topic is market research. So Mae and I are going to be talking about how small business professionals participate in market research. And before we start, I wanted to just talk about what market research is. So market research is basically a continuous process of analyzing information, the industry's capabilities within the market so that we can determine our acquisition strategy. And we perform two different kinds of market research. We call it strategic market research and tactical market research. So strategic, just imagine you need to buy a car. In the future, in a few years, you're going to buy a car. So you're kind of constantly conducting strategic market research. In fact, this is my case, because right now I don't own a car, but at some point I'm going to have to buy a car. I live in DC, so I can walk everywhere. So I'm kind of always scanning the roads whenever I'm driving, trying to figure out, what kind of car do I want? What are the cars out there? What color do I want? But when it comes down to actually, okay, I'm going to buy a car in a month, I've got to do more tactical market research. So that's the difference. So when we have our technical people, they go to conferences, they're probably doing strategic market research, but then we'll have an industry day where or maybe send out a request for sources sought where we're looking for small businesses or companies that can meet a specific procurement. That's kind of the more tactical market research. So how do you perform market research? How do you assist your customers, your contracting and technical customers with market research?
When I first started, the contractors actually sought me out and they came and spoke to me individually, and they delivered their capability statements to me in hard copy and business cards. And so after a matter of just a week, I realized that I had to get some type of a system together. So what I do is I have a Rolodex type environment, and so that I can find the contractor when I need to find them. I also capture their capability statements electronically. I store them in a shared file that the contracting office also has access to.
Okay.
So when they want to find a contractor, small business, they can search by keywords.
Okay.
Such as that JSIDS process, they could search by it. And I have identified the type of small business that each of those are in the different socioeconomic categories. So if they're doing and seeking a particular socioeconomic category, they can also find that as well.
Okay. And so every small business professional does it a little differently in terms of, not all of them have a database where they can put their capability statement, but it does make it quite a lot easier, because when you go to conferences and you come back with all this paper of capability statements, well, how do you get that to the right technical person or to the right contracting officer?
Absolutely.
So putting it in a database is a little easier. But you notice that Mae said that her databases enables people to search on keywords. So one of the things that I wanted to point out about capability statements is it's important to make sure that the capability statement has some keywords. And I'll just give a little bit of an example. When I was at the Naval Air Systems Command as the director of small business, small businesses would come to me and they could do several different things. Like they might have capabilities in IT, including cyber, but they might also have capabilities in logistics, and they might also have capabilities in program management. Sometimes we might buy all of that stuff together in one contract, but it's typically different technical people that are looking, a different technical person would review the capability statement or be looking for IT related, work, services or companies, and a different company or a different technical person might be looking at logistics. So, when you write your capability statement, make sure you're writing it for the right audience, because if you're going after a logistics procurement, you don't want to spend a lot of time talking about, cyber possibly. It just depends. You've got to make sure that your capability statements are a little tailored.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you sell products, that needs to clearly be articulated.
Right. So we've got a question here from Facebook Live. So how does a small business go about getting into your Rolodex system?
Well, I can be found on the Marine Corps Base Quantico homepage. And of course, you just search by the keyword small business, and I should be found under the regional contracting office, and my contact information is there.
And then also for our other commands, the Department of Navy Office of Small Business Programs website has, we have 10 buying commands in the Navy and the Marine Corps. So there's a section for each of the buying commands on our website with a contact information for that associate director. So let's say you didn't know about Mae, but you knew that you kind of had a feeling for, you wanted to do some installation and logistics related work for the Marine Corps. You would look at our website and you would determine that, well, that's bought under Marine Corps INL. So let me contact Stan. And then you might call Stan, and Stan might tell you, well, you want to get a little closer to the requirement. Mae Mathieu is down there at the Quantico base, and she's the person that you can talk to. Also through conferences, industry days, I recommend the person that asked this question go back to one of our previous Industry Live Facebook talks where we talked about how to be procurement ready. And in that talk, we talk a lot about, how do you figure out which of the commands buy what you sell? How do you figure out how to approach them? I'm going to say one thing about how not to approach us, because this happens a lot. I'll just get an email, Emily, here's my capability statement. Help me send it around. I'm not going to do that because I'm not sure who you are trying to market. It's not my job to market for your company. So you've got to do your homework and become procurement ready, which is what we discussed in another thing, but in another Facebook Live industry talk, and that video is still on our website. But just don't shotgun it. You've got to do your homework and know that you're targeting the right command.
And I received several emails a week, and I'm talking 5 to 10, that they're paying a marketing firm to send it to me. And I will filter down and I will talk to that individual specifically instead of back to the marketing firm.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to the marketing firm doesn't do me any good.
So when you read capability statements, what are the kinds of things that should be on there? What should they include? Should they include their DUNS number, their caged code, NAICS codes? What do you see that's good on capability statements, and where do you see that there's consistently issues?
Well, the first thing I do, like you do, I'm sure, is I read top left to bottom right. And so I expect to see the name of your company at the top. It doesn't matter if it's centered or if it's on the left, but it should be the largest print of anything you have on that page. So that way I know exactly the name of the company, and it should be exactly the way it is in sam.gov where they have to be registered.
The system for award management. In order to do business
Correct.
with us, you have to have your company registered in there. That's also covered in our procurement ready video.
And that's where they get those codes that I think needs to be on your capability statement. The first is if you put your cage code on your capability statement, it tells me you're registered to do business with the federal government already.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to go back and validate that because you've already provided it to me.
Mm-hmm.
I am a lover of NAICS codes.
Mm-hmm.
So I also search by NAICS codes because when they post a requirement, they have to declare a NAICS code.
Okay.
So it's a good match if I see that's your primary. Clearly, that's a good indication that this business can perform those types of services.
Okay. And that's the North American Industry
Classification
System.
Code.
Systems code, and that some people call it NAICS code, some people call it NACS code, but bottom line, that helps describe the area of work where you do business. And every time we put a request for proposal on the street or do market research, we typically conduct it under a particular NACS code or NAICS code.
You mentioned the DUNS number and tax ID number has been provided also. I don't recommend putting those on a capability statement. As a contracting professional, I can go to sam.gov, log in with my user ID and register, and I can actually see and get those. To release those to the general public, and I wouldn't do that. I would stick to the cage code and your NAICS codes. Protect yourself to some degree in this electronic world.
Yeah, is it important to talk about on your capability statement to back up your claims of certain capabilities with some documented past performance?
What I like to see is after you've identified your company and made that real clear for me is to go into your capabilities using words, paragraphs, agencies you've supported. I see a lot of icons for those that have done Department of the Navy.
They put the Department of Navy icon logo there just to show that they've done work with them in the past.
And I think it's very important to identify your past performance. I don't need a lot of information. I need to know the agency or the activity you did it for, and you can put the contract number, type services, NAICS code it was under, some accolades for your organization. And then at the bottom, since that's the last thing I read, I think your point of contact information should be there. And of course, as you know, I deal with lots of personalities upstairs in my contracting office, and certain people want a name in your company name, and some contractors are using info at, and some people consider that impersonal.
So they really want a name to contact.
They really do. And some people want to call you, so a phone number is important. I like to see the address. I like to see how close you are. Since we buy logistics services and installation services, I need to know if you're in my area.
Geographic area. And what about a website?
A website is absolutely key for the requiring activities and the technical people, because they're going to get far more in depth as to your capabilities than I do. I need to. So
that leads to something else. So they're going to get far more in depth to your capabilities, and the reason for that is, and you all should, if you're a contractor doing business with the government, you should know about our federal acquisition regulations. And I'm pulling up FAR Part 19, which is the small business programs. We don't just make this stuff up. It's all in our regulations. And FAR Part 19 says that a procurement shall be set aside for small business, meaning competed only among small businesses, unless the contracting officer determines that there is not a reasonable expectation of obtaining offers from 2 or more responsible small business concerns that are competitive in terms of market price, quality, and delivery. So by looking at your capability statement, looking at your website, looking at what you've done in the past, it kind of helps us decide not if you're going to win the contract because you haven't even submitted a bid on our, or a proposal yet, but whether or not there's 2 or more companies out there that we're likely to get a proposal from that are small that can do this work. It helps us determine our acquisition strategy.
Absolutely.
And and you will know if you've been in Mae's office because Mae, describe your office.
I have an 8-foot by 16-foot American flag painted on one entire wall.
On her cinder block wall, I've been in there. So if you search our Department of Navy Facebook page, you'll probably find a picture of me with Mae right in front of that wall because I was impressed by it when I went to visit her. So is there a Marine Corps Industry Day? Does Marine Corps hold Industry Days? That's the question that we got.
Each individual small business professional will handle their installation as protocol dictates. I can talk to Marine Corps Base Quantico Regional Contracting Office specific in that I am the hostess for all industry days.
Okay.
For each individual contract action,
Mm-hmm.
as well as I usually host late August, early September, an industry day that I cover how we're organized, what we're procuring, and I identify, we have 4 teams in the office, red, white, blue, and green, and I provide a list of actions that each team has that they will be working in the next 6 months.
Oh, awesome. List of upcoming
And I
actions.
hand that out that day usually.
Okay, so how do people find out about it? Do you advertise it in FBO?
Absolutely.
FedBizOps?
The FedBizOps.
Will you commit to sending us an announcement that we can put on our Facebook page?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We're definitely trying to get more
You know,
posts, and then take a picture of yourself giving out information, and we'll post it on there.
I try real hard not to do it too close to Modern Day Marine because our sister contracting office, Systems Command on Quantico.
Marine Corps Systems Command.
You're right. The Marine Corps System Command hosts their own Modern Day Marine, which I am in the small business tent, so feel free to stop by and say hello.
That's usually at the end of September, I think.
Correct. This year's the 24th, 25th, and 26th.
24th, 25th, and 26th of September, Modern Day Marine.
Mm-hmm.
And large businesses as well as smalls can exhibit.
Absolutely.
You probably just Google Marine Corps Systems Command Modern Day Marine and find out information about it. And then there's typically some small business sessions that are held where the director of small business briefs at Marine Corps Systems Command what they do. So we have 10 buying commands in the Department of Navy. 2 of them are Marine Corps. One is Marine Corps Systems Command, and the other is Marine Corps Installations and Logistics Command. So awesome. So Mae, is your office meeting their small business goals?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Right now, and I ran the report at the first of the month, 37.5% of all of our dollars are obligated to small business.
Wow. Is that typically where you end up, around 37?
Last year we were at 33.
Okay.
We're only required to do 23, so
Right.
my office really likes small businesses.
So, and I saw that this is a question on goals, and if you know me, I talk about goals. We are measured by our goals, but the most important thing, and if you watch our Facebook Live industry chat on how to be procurement ready, is, if we're sending our Marines to fight with poor equipment, but we're meeting our small business goals, what do you think matters more? The Marines have got to be in an unfair fight where we have the advantage. And so whatever small businesses deliver, it's got to work. So I'm more interested in companies, and we all are more interested in companies that can help us achieve our mission. And if we meet the goal, great. We're definitely trying to meet the goal, but we're going to meet it with companies that can help us achieve our mission. And we want to set small businesses up to succeed, not to fail. So,
and we have some terrific, in all of the socioeconomic categories that support Marine Corps Base Quantico.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay. Well, what do you as a small business professional ask industry for to help you with your market research? What are the kinds of things that you want them to submit? You said the capability statement, but when there's sometimes where you go out with a sources sought, or contracts will go out with a request for information or a sources sought. Well, do I really need to respond to that if you have my capability statement?
When I meet with a small business, and I do encourage that, I actually allow a full hour on my first meeting with a small business.
Ooh,
Yeah, it's a
that's
long
good.
time, but I have a lot of information to cover. And discussing those sources, thoughts, and the request for information is one thing that I definitely make sure that I cover.
Well, why do I have to respond to those if it just takes so much time if you have my capabilities statement?
Because if the contracting office comes and speaks to me and they are looking for a particular type of small business under a certain NAICS code, I can search and I can find them. However, if they do it and they advertise it and they don't find you, there is no documentation. And what I counsel and recommend my small businesses do is they respond to them so that we can document that rule of two that you read earlier in regards to getting two small businesses to respond, so that I can show in the documentation, in the market research, that that actually happened and
that they're interested in participating. Because you could have a capability statement, but maybe it's old, maybe they went out of business, maybe, you know, there could be a lot of different things. Maybe they're not going to submit a bid. So you want to make sure that you're likely to get, you know, two or more that are going to actually bid when the RFP comes out.
Well, and a lot of small businesses, like right now, have their resources are pretty tied up because, you know, the funding came down after the CRA and all that. So now they're really working very, very hard to get proposals together. And, you know, a proposal will get them dollars and awards, where a source of sought announcement and a request for information will not.
Okay.
But I need that to document moving forward with a small business set aside of some type.
What kinds of tips would you give to companies for responding to sources sought? Why is it, what should they put in their response?
The one subject that I talk about specifically are the tasks in each of the performance work statement. What the requiring activity done has told industry what it is they're procuring.
In the RFI, it's like, we're going to buy this, and here's the tasks, and we want to know if small businesses can do it, or who's out there that can do it. So then what's the key to responding?
If you take each of those tasks and you identify 3 bits of information, I recommend bullets, but it doesn't have to be. But they need to tell me what their leadership approach is. We're going to prime this task. In other words, it's going to be our program manager that's going to be on-site responsible. They need to identify the skill sets that are needed to perform that task. Because if you're generating a system and you need a systems of systems type engineer, I need to know that you understand that and see that in the performance work statement. I don't think you need to identify any numbers, just the skill sets needed to be responsive. And the very last thing is, if you have past performance, just tell me where you've done it and who you've done it for.
Well, so, but that's for you, but the main thing too is to read the RFI or the sources sought. Some people use the term RFI, request for information. Some people use sources sought, but you've got to make sure that you respond to those, because each one might ask for some different information.
Absolutely. Those 4 teams that we have in Marine Corps Base Quantico, each one is going to structure the response, and they're going to limit the number of pages. They're going to tell you what size and type font to use, you know, because you can't get so small that Mae can't read it. You know, and they do that simply so that they can find it and it's in the sequence that makes sense, because the requiring activity is going to review this for technical capability.
And make it easy for them to review. Like if the sources sought has, I don't know, 3 different categories that you have to address, don't bundle them all up into one paragraph. List the category and list your response under it. I mean, make it easy for someone evaluating to not have a problem determining your capabilities. So there's been some situations sometimes that I've run into where we've done our sources sought and we have to document our acquisition strategy in writing, and based on the value of the procurement, it needs to be approved at different levels. So we've gotten to the point where we've documented our acquisition strategy based on our market research, and we're getting ready to release the request for proposal, and a company comes in and says, wait a second, that should be set aside. I can do it. Why are you going full and open? That's kind of a little too late to come back and say that, because then you're requiring us to completely start over, and we're probably not going to do that. So it's better to get involved up front and early in submitting your responses.
Right. But what I can do, if I know that information, when it comes time for the RFP to be released, number one, they should be watching FBO.
FedBiz Ops.
And they should be registered to receive information in that North American Industry Classification Code so that they get the email. But if I'm aware that they're truly interested and it's hypothetically a socioeconomic type set aside, I'm known to actually send an email.
Okay. So I was going to say, let's just read this. Is there a minimum dollar threshold for solicitations that are identified on your LRAF, your long range acquisition forecast? And when are solicitations under that threshold posted? I think throughout the Department of the Navy, the dollar threshold is 5 million for putting it on the long range forecast, although some activities choose to put lower dollar requirements on there. And we are working on updating the long range forecasts that are on our website. That's a way that industry can kind of do market research about what we're buying. So if you go to the Department of Navy Office of Small Business Programs website, you'll see a link to each of the buying commands long-range forecasts. And some of them aren't as up-to-date as we'd like, so we're working on getting those up-to-date. But typically, it's any procurement over 5 million, but your command might put others out there.
We put a lower value on our long, because we're a smaller.
Because you're a small organization, so maybe a lot of the things you buy aren't over 5 million. Okay, so it's a good thing for small businesses. We covered this in our How to Be Procurement Ready webinar or industry talk, so you can take a look at that one. But we talked about how to use that long-range forecast to find opportunities. And another thing that we do with respect to market research, it's not just to find out if small businesses are out there, but it's also to find out how should it be a firm fixed price contract or a cost contract? Have we bought this before? Did another command buy this before? Did the Army buy it before? How did they price it? So there's much more than just determining if it's a small business set aside or not.
Well, and industry drives a lot of, the cybersecurity is changing daily. And if there's something that's the latest and the greatest, we definitely, and it usually comes from a small business.
Right, that's true.
Usually.
So when's the next Quantico? When is your next small business day?
I apologize, I haven't scheduled a date.
But May's gonna, when she schedules it, she's going to tell us and we'll put it on Facebook, right?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. It's usually late August, early September.
All right, well, is it important for companies to attend industry days? Like, and especially if it's, for a big procurement, that maybe I'm pretty sure it's not going to go small business set aside. Why should I, as a small business, attend that industry day?
I'm going to give you a specific example.
Okay.
There was a requirement that had been generated. It was a course that was instructed at 10 different Marine locations, and it was for more than just the Marine Corps. And it had always been performed by this, institution, this college. And so I held an industry day for it, seeing if small businesses would participate. And sure enough, I had an audience of over 50 people.
Wow, so you got some
Absolutely.
We're going to get competition on the buy.
And they were small businesses, which was just, an extra bonus.
Right.
And so once the solicitation closed, we are moving forward and the results are going to be absolutely positive.
Good. Well, another reason to attend is for subcontracting opportunities. So another reason we do market research, we may end up going full and open and competing it against, large and small having to compete. But it helps us determine if we want to put a minimum requirement for subcontracting in the RFP. So it helps us determine if there's small businesses interested in subcontracting. Let's say we're having an industry day for a major weapons system. These large primes aren't going to do all the work themselves. They're looking for small businesses because there's a requirement. They have a subcontracting plan. In any procurement, I think it's over 700,000. I think that's the threshold, that the largest have to have a subcontracting plan. So they're looking for smalls. So if you come to the industry day, it helps them find you.
And the networking that participates and goes on at those industry days is just unlimited. In fact, why, I don't know, but a large business came and attended this activity, and I think they were specifically seeking small businesses.
So they're looking to see what small business can I subcontract to.
And so I told her to send me an email, and she did.
Mhm.
And so what I did was I responded to her
Mhm.
and I blind copied everybody that met her need.
Mhm. And then they
And that's
could
how I
reach
did
out
the
to her.
teaming.
Mhm.
I am a creative individual, and if it gets the small businesses assistance and opportunities,
Mhm.
I do it.
Okay, here's a question. What do you suggest a company looking to get their first contract? Like, would it be a micro purchase? Number one, I'd suggest subcontracting. That helps you get your foot in the door. But how do
Absolutely.
you get the smaller contracts? Where do we announce? Where did your command
Well,
announce them?
They're not required to be publicized until $10,000.
Mhm.
And right now we're working a lot of those small requirements. What I recommend is they contact someone such as myself, make sure I've got their capability statement,
Mhm.
so that I understand what it is they do, and I can reach out to them as I see the requirements. I just recently got permission to get into the acquisition system that they actually build the purchase requests in.
Mhm.
And I'm now helping that small business contracting officer, the small business simplified acquisition procedures contracting branch chief. And so I'm actually now seeing them before they even start getting work by the contract specialist. So I'm actually providing some capability statements in the folders as I go send them forward.
To help educate them on if there's small businesses that can do the work.
Absolutely.
So let's get into, we talked a little bit about capability statements. What about business cards? What do you think is, what helps you do your market research when you get business cards? For example, you go to these conferences, everyone's giving you a business card. What's important to think about there?
The bad examples are what stands out in my mind. I had somebody hand me a business card and their contact information was on the front with an orange background, glossy I might add, and I had to turn it over to see the name of their company.
Mm-hmm.
I literally had to turn it back over and I had to handwrite the name of their company on the top. I wouldn't want my company represented like that in somebody's Rolodex.
Mm-hmm.
That just wouldn't be my thing.
Mm-hmm. But you also, because it was glossy, you had a hard time writing on it.
Oh, I had to use a Sharpie. It was the only thing that would penetrate and stay.
And you don't usually go to a conference with a Sharpie. So a lot of times when we meet you at a conference, we might write a little note,
SDV, OSB.
SDV. Well, that should be on your business card if you're a service disabled veteran owned or a woman owned or a hub zone, but sometimes people don't put them on their business cards. So we might write that down. We might jot down wearing a blue suit, or wearing a purple tie. It just kind of helps jog, for me, it helps jog my memory. Where did I meet this person? And the name of the conference where you met them. It helps you remember.
Exactly. If it's my industry day, I'm going to note that so that I remember, so that I can
want to know where you met them. Because someone then calls you and you maybe pull out the Rolodex. You're like, oh yeah, I remember meeting that person. I mean, don't take it personally for those of you who talk with me if I don't remember, because I meet so many people and I know you do too.
Absolutely.
So do something that helps make you stick out, although having a glossy business card makes you stick out in a way that's not helpful to us. So think about that.
And one business actually used a black background with white letters.
So then you don't have a pen to write on.
Well, it might be the easiest to read for my human eye, but again, I can't write on it.
Right.
And I do. I may not write on it when you're standing there, Emily, but I will definitely write on it shortly thereafter.
Okay. Helps you remember. Good. So let's see. I got a question here. What avenues can a niche small businesses take to get their products in front of military end users?
Products. It would be important to know what the product is. I had a company that approached me who had made a helmet because he was active duty. And he literally, being an engineer, it was pretty cool, invented a helmet. We support the installation, so it's not my lane.
Right.
So I needed to find the program manager or the division that actually oversaw and purchased the helmets. And so I do it via email.
And would that have been at Marine Corps Marine Corps Systems Command?
Correct.
Because they buy the stuff that outfits the Marines.
Correct.
You buy stuff for the people that are in the Commandant's marching band. So this is the thing. It's kind of hard to figure out which of these commands buy what you sell. What is it that you're trying to sell? And we covered this in detail on that Being Procurement Ready industry talk, which is on our Facebook page, and we'll make an effort. We'll make sure we post that again, post the link, but it's on there if you wanted to watch that. Also, another way to help us see what you make is to come in or get your products in front of technical people, is to go to industry days. go to conferences where these technical people might be attending. The Department of Navy puts on Gold Coast. So we have our 30th annual Gold Coast Small Business Procurement event coming up on August 6th, 7th, and 8th. That's an excellent opportunity to meet with small business professionals such as Mae. Sometimes the small business professionals bring their technical folks with them. That's an excellent opportunity to have a display and to share what you're selling. But one of the things, and I'll just point out quickly because I don't want to repeat what we talked about in that Procurement Ready video, is just because you have something that you think is cool that you're selling doesn't mean that we have a need for it. So you've got to do your homework and figure out who has a need. We do see a lot of small businesses that are all excited about what they have, but they haven't gone out to find out if there's a need for what they sell. And the government can't get money and buy something if we don't have a need for it. So you've got to make sure you're satisfying a need.
Well, and if I can't, I will tell them, like, go to DLA.
Right, to Defense Logistics Agency.
Go to an agency that can use it and recommend they contact them.
So that's another thing. All small business professionals, they need to know more than just their command. You need to know all the other commands and what they buy, and so that we can kind of steer you in the right direction.
And more than one agency may use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. So we can help you, but we can't do all of that for you. So someone asked, will there be an East Coast event like Ndia Gold Coast in San Diego? The answer to that is we team very closely with the Navy League and the Chief of Naval Operations Office to have a small business event at Sea Space. So if you just Google Sea Space, that's a large outreach event that happens usually in April at the Gaylord, which is on the East Coast. And Gold Coast is on the West Coast. The agendas are a little different. I mean, Gold Coast is definitely all small business focused, whereas the small business things that go on at Sea Space are kind of in a side room, typically not on the main stage, but they're both ways that we get the word out. Part of the challenge is staffing. It takes a lot of, you said the NDIA Gold Coast event, but it takes a lot of, NDIA volunteers do a lot for that, but we also participate in that, and we just don't have enough staffing to put 2 big conferences on in a year. And that's one of the reasons we started these Facebook Live industry talks, as a way to get the word out to more people on what we do and where the opportunities are. So I guess if enough companies wrote in and we're demanding that the Navy have the Department of Navy have another event on the East Coast like we do on the West Coast, maybe we could figure out how to make that happen. But resources are a constraint for sure. One thing I wanted to point out at Gold Coast, I would recommend Googling Department of Navy or Navy Gold Coast, and you'll find the agenda. And I think that there's some good things on the agenda. There's a lot of technical people coming to speak. We're doing a session on the main stage on how to use FPDS-NG, or the Federal Data Procurement System Next Generation, which is where contracting officers enter all the contract awards in there. So how can industry use that to perform market research? Because in addition to us doing market research, industry needs to do it. So how can you use that database to find out who buys what you sell? There's a session on that. And then there's also a session on how to do business with the big companies. And then also another session on with a small prime and a small business that's prime subcontracting out to large businesses, and large businesses that are subbing to smalls, and what do you have to look for when you do that teaming arrangement, the subcontracting arrangement. That's just a little bit of highlights at Gold Coast, so highly recommend that if you can attend. So is market research written? I mean, like, how long does it have to be? Where does it end up? Do you have to document that anywhere?
Well, at the Marine Corps, we are required to actually put it in the contract file, so it is documented. The requiring activity starts it, and they research industry at that strategic level, and then when it gets to us, we further define it and further document. So we use the word mature it, because we actually document, like from my capability statements and from actually going out to FPDS and going to the DD 2579. You can now do a search out there as well. And so we search the contracting avenues to document and find, what's being done currently.
But the market research ultimately is documented in a written acquisition strategy that's signed off by the program office, the technical folks, and there's different levels based on the dollar value and the complexity of the procurement as to who has to sign off on it. And then it ends up in the contract file documentation.
Absolutely. Mostly the summary ends up in that acquisition strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I like to see the market research because I like to see where they've been, what all they've checked, and do I need to educate them to give them other sources to find.
Right. Okay. The niche that was submitted, about how to market a niche product was office supplies. That's a challenge because a lot of our office supplies are bought using purchase cards, right?
Absolutely.
And so what can you say about office supplies?
We have a ServMart on Quantico that we can get probably 95 to 99% of all of our office supplies. And that is stocked either through the Navy contracts or it's done through Systems Command. I don't have, privy to actually choosing what needs to be in there. However, the requiring activity folks, I direct them to go to them and ask them if they can get it.
Okay.
So they can change the inventory what's done at that ServMart. And by them coming to me, I also can educate them if they ask for a capability statement or a small business that I think could assist them. I can do that as well.
Someone suggested the Tidewater Norfolk area. I was just in Norfolk for an event that Norfolk Tidewater Hampton Roads area put on, and it was called Catapult. So if you Google Catapult, you'll see the agenda and the kinds of things that were discussed at that event. The Office of Naval Research participated in that event, so it was mostly Hampton Roads area showcasing the capabilities in the science and technology innovation areas that are available down in Hampton Roads. So we did used to have a conference called Blue Coast, and it was in the Norfolk area, and we put it on with the Chief Information Officer for the Department of the Navy. So we could take a look at possibly doing that again. It's just a matter of resources, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the fourth quarter of the year, so right now is not a good time.
But anything else that we missed, May? I think we've gotten.
I think attending the industry days is very, very key and important because the networking that happens there, the teaming arrangements that can come out of there, just simply hearing the discussion of, I saw this advertised on the FBO, can you talk about it?
Right.
And I deliberately hold my industry days for individual contract actions before the RFP gets on the street so that we can hold open dialogue, so that I don't have to send those questions through legal counsel.
Okay, that's good too.
So that's why those industry days are being held when they are, so that you can help steer the requirement and further define it if need be.
Okay, one more question and then we'll sum it up. It was, how do small businesses do business with the Navy if they have a lack of past performance? So a good way to start with past performance is start small. Try to go after some small simplified acquisition procurements.
Absolutely.
Things that are under 25K. Be a subcontractor to a prime. Talk to clearly other companies have done it. So find other companies how did they start out? How did they do it? What made them successful in getting their past performance? And I believe that you can count past performance of individual employees towards your company's
Absolutely.
Past performance. I'm pretty sure.
I have had past Marines who have experience in an organization, and it's them writing the requirement, and so they have personal experience in doing that type of work, such as that MAGTAF, Marine and the ground force. And if they have experience in that can clearly be identified in their source of sought announcement or request for information when they're submitting it.
So you're saying if someone's a retired Marine and now they're working for a company that's bidding on a procurement?
As long as there's a time frame and it's clean and it's clear, but yes.
Right, they've met that legal time frame where they can't go back to work.
Absolutely.
But if they have experience doing that stuff, that can count for the company's past performance.
I had a small business where the lady decided to open her own business, and since she had done the PM for another contractor, she identified that as her past performance.
That was her past performance.
And that's totally acceptable.
And if you don't have past performance, it can't be rated negatively. It's a neutral rating. So Those are some
Yeah.
tips to help you with the past performance. So I think the key takeaways are that the government does market research. There's kind of two different kinds: the strategic market research, where we're just kind of scanning the environment, and then the tactical market research, where it might be on an individual procurement, where we know exactly what we're going to buy, but we want to find out, who's out there that can deliver. It's important to contact the small business professional at the different commands where you want to do business. It's important to make sure your capability statement is clear and articulate
Absolutely.
on the capabilities that you can provide. I'm telling you right now, if you got typos in your capability statement, that's not going to go over too well, because that kind of, at least for me, that would be an indication of the quality of work you're going to do when you get the contract. So make sure that you put your best foot forward. And then make sure you have, all the right things on your business card. Make sure you attend industry days, respond to sources sought, network with other companies that have been successful. And I think that's it. Attend Gold Coast and keep following us on Facebook and Twitter.
Absolutely.
Because Mae's going to post her next industry day on our Facebook site. Right?
Thank you, Emily.
All right. Thanks, Mae. All right. Bye.
Wonderful.
Good bit of questions.
Okay.